When we save money, our brains expect the math to look like this. You put in a consistent amount of cash every month, and your account balance climbs in a steady, straight line toward your goal. But human biology actually fights against us here. Researchers call this exponential growth bias. Our minds are wired to process linear additions, but wealth grows on an aggressive, almost invisible curve. If you invest consistently for 40 years, the first 10 years of patient, disciplined contributions will generate a pathetic 3.6% of your total lifetime returns. Meanwhile, the final 10 years will generate over 60%. If you've been investing for a few years and your balance has barely moved, you haven't done anything wrong. That feeling of frustration is just the unavoidable mathematical reality of the early compounding curve. The financial industry wants you to believe building serious wealth requires finding a perfectly timed stock, earning a massive six-figure salary, or having elite connections. A survey of 10,000 everyday American millionaires destroys that myth completely. 79% of those individuals received exactly zero inheritance. A full one-third of them never made six figures in a single working year. Their top 3 professions were engineers, accountants, and teachers. They didn't have inside information. They simply spent a median of 28 years doing incredibly boring things with their money. As late investor Charlie Munger pointed out, amassing the first $100,000 is a profound, unavoidable struggle, but you have to do it. These people are not financial geniuses. They just possessed a mathematical map to help them survive the invisible, flat portion of that compounding curve. It's called the 7-5-3-1 rule. Think of a lily pad growing on a pond. If it doubles in size every day, taking 48 days to completely cover the pond, most assume the pond is half covered on day 24. The actual mathematical answer is the 47th day. The pond is less than 1% covered until that 24th day. Your investment account works the exact same way. It mathematically sits nearly empty for years until the explosion happens at the very end. This brings us to the first number in the framework, 7. 7 is the absolute minimum investing horizon you need before compounding starts to feel real, and before you earn enough evidence to stop running on pure faith. This maps perfectly to the rule of 72, an equation invented in 1494. If you divide the number 72 by a standard 10% expected annual return, you get 7.2 years. That is exactly how long it takes your invested money to double. This chart shows historical returns in the S&P 500, which is an index tracking the performance of the 500 largest public companies in the United States. Investing for any random one-year stretch is highly risky, with only a 74% chance of making money. But stretch that out to any rolling 7-year window since 1926, and your odds jump to over 95%. Every single 7-year window has produced a positive average return. 7 years is the mandatory commitment required to see your money double at least once. That first doubling is the exact psychological proof your brain desperately needs to keep going. But committing to 7 years means nothing if a single bad year wipes out your money. That is where the number 5 comes in. It stands for diversification across 5 specific types of assets that behave differently from each other, working together like a Formula One pit crew. Your broad market index funds, which are single investments that bundle together thousands of different company stocks, do most of the heavy lifting. Meanwhile, defensive assets like bonds are not there to win the race. They are there to ensure you don't crash out entirely and panic sell during a bad lap. Once your structure is set, you have to survive the number 3. These are the 3 psychological phases every investor faces. First is doubt, when your account barely moves in the first 2 years. Next is frustration, arriving right around year 4, usually exactly 30 seconds before the exponential curve finally bends upward. And then comes the final phase, panic. The market drops 30%, the way it did in March 2020. Your account balance suddenly plunges below the actual cash you contributed. Research from Dalbar shows that in years where the market returns over 25%, the average investor only earns about 16.5%. That massive loss happens strictly because people make emotional timing decisions. They get scared and sell at the absolute bottom. Panic does not protect your capital. It permanently transfers your potential future gains to whoever was patient enough to buy what you just sold at a discount. If you survive the panic, you reach the exact moment the math takes over. Here, you pull the final lever, the number 1. This stands for 1 annual increase in your contribution amount. This chart shows the staggering difference this single adjustment makes. If you invest $300 a month for 30 years, your final balance sits around $448,000. But if you bump your contribution up by a microscopic 5% every single January, which is exactly $15, or roughly the cost of one fast casual burrito bowl per month, your ending balance rockets to approximately $787,000. The mechanism that makes this work is automation. You must set your brokerage account to automatically increase that amount. If you rely on human memory, you will inevitably have a stressful month and skip it. Let's look at the lifelong reality of 2 people, Marcus and Diane. They are both 32 years old, and they both start investing $400 a month. In year 3, Diane gets nervous during a market dip and sells. She never increases her contributions, and by age 65, she has $389,000. Marcus strictly follows the 7-5-3-1 framework, leaves his money alone, and automates his annual increases. He ends up with $1.1 million. That is a $711,000 difference. We call this the freedom gap. Diane's lower balance means she has to keep working for another 3 years. Marcus's $1 million balance is the power to politely decline a stressful project at work because he genuinely doesn't need the money anymore. Over those decades, Marcus's money did far more work than he did. Immense wealth does not require Wall Street complexity or genius-level intellect. It is simply the ultimate reward for being aggressively boring, automating the math, and leaving the machine alone to do its job. You are sitting at your kitchen table on a Thursday night, staring at the glowing screen of your banking app. You paid rent, the car note, the internet bill, and the minimum payment on that credit card. After the survival math is finished, you have exactly $214 and 14 days until your next paycheck. You open Instagram to distract yourself from the exhaustion. The very first thing you see is your coworker, someone with your exact job title and salary, posting photos from a beach in Cabo. They seem to have a secret side hustle or a trust fund because there is no obvious way they are living that life on the paycheck you both share. When you look back at your $214, it feels mathematically insignificant. Financial media reinforces this, suggesting that building wealth requires finding a specific crypto coin, inheriting a fortune, or earning a massive 6-figure tech salary. But the data tells a boring, consistent story. Ramsey Solutions surveyed over 10,000 everyday American millionaires and found that 79% of them received 0 inheritance. 1/3 of them never made 6 figures in a single working year of their entire careers. This chart shows the top 3 professions for those millionaires: engineers, accountants, and teachers. These are people in occupations with modest average pay who are quietly building net worths that would surprise their high-earning peers. These millionaires prove that building wealth is a function of time and math, which raises a difficult question. If $200 a month is the key to that math, where is it currently hiding in your own budget? To find that $200, we have to look at the specific ways your wealth is leaking out. Behavioral psychologists have engineered several traps to make your spending invisible to you, starting with the subscription economy. This data visualization illustrates the massive gap in our perception of spending. Most Americans assume they spend around $86 a month on subscriptions, but the actual bank data shows an average of $219. This industry relies on behavioral inertia, making it frictionless to sign up, but a nightmare to cancel. The second leak is the exhaustion tax. You get home completely drained from making decisions all day, and the thought of cooking feels physically impossible, so you order a $12 burrito. Between inflated menu prices and service fees, that meal costs $25. You are paying a massive premium simply because your brain is exhausted. The largest trap is sitting in your driveway. The average new car payment in America is currently $750 a month. Dealerships stretch out loans to 84 months to keep your brain focused on the monthly slice so you never process the total devastation of the pie. This split screen compares the 2 paths of that $750. A car payment leads to a depreciating asset worth almost nothing long term. Investing that same $750 monthly for 30 years at historical market returns generates over $1.5 million. Canceling ghost subscriptions, deleting delivery apps, and driving a paid-off car recovers $600 to $800 a month. Reclaiming this money stops you from funding the banking industry's wealth and starts building your own. Wall Street wants you to believe that investing is impossibly complex. The reality is that a low-cost S&P 500 index fund often outperforms the pros. The S&P 500 is a basket of the 500 largest, most profitable companies in America. When they sell products and generate profit, you get a share. Historically, the S&P 500 has returned an average of roughly 10% annually over the long term. This average includes every major economic disaster, world war, and recession of the last century. This area graph tracks a $200 monthly investment for 40 years. The bottom there shows your personal contributions, totaling $96,000. But the massive upper layer represents the market interest, pushing your balance to $1.1 million. Compound interest builds 90% of this wealth. Every $200 spent on a fleeting dopamine hit today effectively liquidates over $1 million of your future wealth. You are simply paying for that purchase decades in advance. Most people quit because they suffer from exponential growth bias, expecting progress to look like a straight linear line. When the early returns don't look impressive, it's tempting to abandon the strategy. This line chart plots the 7-5-3-1 rule. Reaching your first $100,000 takes 7 to 10 years of grinding. But then the physics flip. Reaching $200,000 takes 5 years, $300,000 takes 4, and hitting $400,000 takes just 3 years. Exponential growth takes over. This follows the math of a lily pad doubling in size every single day. If it takes 48 days to cover a pond, it's less than 1% covered on day 40. The explosion happens at the end. Building wealth requires surviving those visually unimpressive years. You have to stay in the room long enough to witness the exponential explosion. Relying on daily willpower to manually invest leftover money is a recipe for failure. Human willpower drains by the end of a workday, and your lifestyle will naturally expand to absorb every dollar left in your account. You have to automate the override. Set up a recurring transfer to move the $200 into your index fund the exact day your paycheck hits. The money moves before your brain registers it as available spending cash. Driving an older car, ignoring the consumer upgrade cycle, is a quiet, powerful flex of true financial security. This philosophy of stealth wealth prioritizes your future over the opinions of strangers. Building this fortress of wealth buys the freedom to look at a toxic situation and walk away without hesitation. While others are stuck on a treadmill of payments, you are using the math of compound interest to secure your future.